I am really happy to do a full reading of your toes. We did a flash reading a few weeks ago, and here we are with a full reading before and afters of your toes over the last couple of weeks. So when I look at your toes, again, as always, right foot is external, left foot is internal. And when I'm looking at your toes, the number one message that I see all the way across is that you are doing the internal work and you guard yourself a lot in the outside world. You guard yourself. Um, you think that you are the strong one, and you protect yourself and you protect others. When I say protect, I put that into air quotes. This would be a big question for you to ask yourself is, how am I protecting myself? And in what ways do I need to release the walls around my heart? Now, the reason why I say this is because when I'm looking at these big toes here, and your second toes for that matter, when I look at these toes, you can see that you have significant callousing around both of these toes. But when we look at this right toe, there is a lot of callousing protecting yourself from the past and protecting yourself in the future. We've got the same thing going on here internally with the left foot, with the left big toe, but it is greater on this side. Now, we're going to just skip ahead here to your star chart. And when we look at this star chart, we can see from these bold lines here. So if this is breaking the chart up into quadrants of sorts, and we look at the quadrants that most of the planets lie in your chart, they're all right down here. So this side of the line is you. This is everyone else. Below the line is internal. Above the line is external. And so this is the innermost quadrant, you and inner world. What you do inside your personal work is how you make impact outside in the world. So we look at some of the big planets out here. We have Jupiter, Neptune, your moon, and this is still below the horizons though. So this is internal work that has an effect on other people. Down here with the moon, Uranus, and Pluto. And if we look straight across, what you do internally is here to make a big impact and here to wake people up and to remove illusion, delusion, and fear. And especially in relationships, in the way that we are transforming and with other people. And then here in this stretchy zone of the North Node in your chart. Now, I realize that that could have been, just a lot. And whatever you don't understand, please let's talk about. The biggest message to take away from what I just explained is that your lifetime is about internal work. Internal work is the name of the game for you. So when we do that, when we take that into account, when we look at your toes here, you are absolutely doing the internal work. There's less blocked energy on the inside and a whole lot less protecting of yourself. Now you are still here to make a big impact. You've got Jupiter straight across the way in that upper right quadrant. You are here to make a big impact in a big way. And right now, while you're protecting yourself, you're probably playing small. You are likely hiding and letting your fears keep you playing small. And there it is. There's some energetic release. It is time for you to release that fear and to stop, and I put this in air quotes, protecting yourself. You're not really protecting yourself. You are playing it small. Now, so one of the things that you can do with your toes to work on energetically releasing this is just spend some time rubbing this toe, just massaging around this toe. Your left toe could use it as well. Your right toe definitely could use it. You've been hurt and deceived in the past. You've built up these calluses, these walls, this protection for yourself from the past. Do some journaling work around what lessons have you learned in the past that you've actually learned and you don't need to hang on to so that you can keep relearning? What are some people, experiences, and situations that you think about in your head so that you remember them, that you can actually release because you've learned what you need to from that? That would be a great thing to meditate on and to journal about, is what do you just not need to think about anymore? What has served its purpose and is no longer serving you, and in fact is not serving you, and it is keeping you back? And what are you afraid of in the future? You see callousing on both of these toes towards the future. This is where you are actually protecting yourself, again, in air quotes, protecting yourself from the future, and you just don't need to. I'm looking also just at the way that your nail sits on these toes. Your past is definitely at some level driving your bus. And yes, our past makes up the future, makes up the present moment, past decisions, past experiences, and you have fear. So journal about that. Meditate on that as you rub these toes. It's time to release the past and face the future without feeling the need to protect yourself. You've got some interesting communication toes here. So definitely some blocked expression communication, and it's far back on your foot. So this is old stuff. This is back from when you were little. You likely felt unsafe to communicate, unsafe to express. And this would be a great opportunity to just gently rub on these toes, gently massage, especially down here, these toes. It might have not been safe for you in the past to express or to communicate, but it is now. And not doing so is holding you back. It's tied into what's going on here in both the past and the future on your life path toe and your spirit path toe. So what is it that you want to communicate? What is it that you are ready to express or ready to release that you did not feel safe expressing as a child? I would be curious to know if there was abuse in your past in some way. And that can look so many different ways. So lean into that. And when we have our one-on-one, consider discussing that question. If there was some abuse in the past, or at the very least, definitely a stifling, a pushing down. You've got a lot of intensity over here with your 0-degree Scorpio moon. Scorpios are incredibly intense. You are at 0 degrees, 26 minutes. 20 minutes, Scorpio. So coming from Libra, who loves balance, who loves harmony. So likely some people-pleasing attributes that you brought into this lifetime with, and then you hit it with this massive impact at 0 degrees Scorpio. That is intense. And so your intensity likely was scary to some of the adults in your life. And you also have a lot of Cancer energy here with your Mars, your Sun, and your Mercury all here in the sign of Cancer. And you've got that 0 degrees Cancer Sun. So you were likely super intense and very emotional. That may not have been very appreciated in your life. And so you might be protecting yourself because people probably told you you were too much, and other things like that. So, and then compare that with your Chiron wound here in Aries, which is quintessential not enough, not enoughness. So people telling you you're too much and you feeling like you're not enough. I know that you know quite a bit about astrology, and so if you have questions about this, we can talk about it. But I'm saying a lot of astrology things, and knowing that you have a decent understanding of astrology. Okay, so too much, not enough, the ultimate wounds. Too much is the mother wound, not enough is the father wound. So do some meditation on what were your relationships like with mother and with father, and in what areas do you feel not enough? Based on your chart, you probably have a high fear of not being smart enough, of not being enough, of not being competent. I say this because your father figure is represented in your chart with the Saturn in Gemini. And so Saturn sitting here in your first house, a lot of your identity is tied up in what your father thinks of you, in how your father feels about you. This has been a big part of your identity. And in the sign of Gemini, so Gemini is about thinking. Gemini is about curiosity. And so you likely have a high fear of not being smart enough. How has that shown up in your life? And how did that block, in many ways, your feeling of safety around expression and communication? And in what ways is that still blocking you in moving forward? So speaking of moving forward, let's talk about your action toes. There's some blocked energy in these. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back here. We'll get to your action toes in just a minute. Let's talk about the nails. We talked a lot about, this stuff happening in your childhood. Let's talk about the nails of your communication expression toes. So they look like they've got some peeling. There's a little bit of a lack of health. Especially in this one, you can see that it's got a little bit of a darker tinge to it, and this one's got some peeling to it. So you still have a high fear of fully expressing and communicating. So a journal prompt would be, what is it that I need to communicate and express right now? And in what ways do I not feel safe around that? Yes. In what ways do I not feel safe around that? How do I need to feel that I need to protect myself? And what are my next steps? What am I here to communicate? When we do your one-on-one reading, we will pull some cards that will help give some clarity around that as well. These toes could use some massaging from the base all the way up to the tip. All right, your action toes. Back to your action toes. All right, these action toes, here's what I love. They're straight, and they've got this cute little point on them. So you are an action taker, and your nails are straightforward, healthy, and they've got a little bit of an uplift. So you are also optimistic in the action that you take. There is some blocked energy in there, especially in this right side. So you are kind of willing to go the long haul, take the long view in action that you take for you and by you. When it comes to taking action out in the world, you're definitely a person of your word. You can see that there is this connection that you can see with this line here together. And you don't always take the action. This probably shows up as fear based on what you've got going on here with your first toes. I love and I'm so grateful for the physical response that I have when I have spoken truth. Deep truth that is ready to be released. Deep truth that is ready to be action, to have action taken upon it. So as you massage these toes and consider the action that you are to take. You are absolutely an action taker. Now, your action may look a little different than some people's because you've got your Mars over here in Cancer. And so Cancer is the crab, right? The crab moves a little differently than most creatures. Crabs will move sideways. Crabs, they do not like confrontation. They want to just do their thing. Crabs moving sideways, sidestepping. So you were probably still are in very many ways a people pleaser. Check out the Saturn in your first house. How are you continuing to try to please your father? And how is that working for you? That would be a question to ask yourself. So with your Mars in Cancer, just realize that the way that you take action might be a little different. Perhaps you wait for inspiration or a little bit of a push to move. I'm thinking energetically, what I'm seeing is a crab on the sand that might just be sitting there until something inspires it to move. Maybe that's danger. Maybe it, whatever it is, it sees food, whatever it is. So waiting for those moments of inspiration. While you would certainly do well, because Saturn, the kind of the planet of structure, is the planet of structure here in your first house. It can also represent your need for structure. And that structure might look like having an intention for what your action is that you're going to take that day, and then trusting that the inspiration will come. So I'm thinking of that little crab sitting there on the beach, trusting that inspiration will come to move you in the direction. So you're not running away from something, but running towards something. So thinking of that inspiration like a bit of food on that sand where you're moving towards it instead of something threatening you that you're moving away from it. There's that push-pull energy that I'm feeling here where in this action toe, sometimes you feel pushed like, oh, I've got to do this. I've got a deadline. Because you are a person of your word, you can see this in the way that these toes align with each other. Do you wait for the push? Do you wait until the last minute? What if you set the intention that instead of a push, you would actually feel a pull towards something? Human nature is that we will run away from pain faster than we will run towards pleasure. Now, that's human nature, but that doesn't have to be the way that we operate. And the energy of your toes is telling me that you wish to be pulled toward things, and that is much more powerful, much more enjoyable than being pushed away from something, meaning away from letting people down, away from a deadline, away from fear of failure. See a lot of fear of failure going on in here. So setting the intention one more time of having the inspiration show up for you at the right time so that you can move towards that. And then set up your trellis. What is your workflow? What is your project management like? So that but give yourself space. Within this 3-day period, here are some actions for you to take, so that then you can have that inspiration as it comes and you're not down to the wire. There may be more to come with that, and there will be more that comes to you with that as you rub these toes. The other thing that I'm seeing is just this little turn of the top of your toe. And again, what I'm seeing here is that crab on the sand. That's your Mars in Cancer in your natal chart that might just do things a little differently. Find what works for you. You likely have tried so many things that all the experts tell you to do, trying to find the way, and really just confining yourself to a box that doesn't fit for you. Moving on, your relationship toes. So some blocked energy in here, but it seems like it's on the release, actually. Here's what I love about these toes. You've got a nice solid nail. You've had some struggles with your relationship with self, but your relationship with others is very, very good and is actually a source of strength for you. And doing collaborative work is very important to you. You can see this with this kind of circle that your action toe and your relationship toes are taking. Working collaboratively, working in small teams, working with the synergy of other people so that you can stay in your zone of genius and other people can stay in their zone of genius. So what is your zone of genius? Where do you want to work within? That would be the action part. And then who are the people that you're naturally going to attract to your action, especially as you release this blocked energy, this protection? Who are the people that you can work with to create this beautiful circle of collaboration? Because relationships are very important to you, continue to work on these toes, continue to release blocked energy around relationships, and have a great deal of gratitude for those relationships. I feel like looking at your toes, there are the big three in life. There are relationships, money, and health. And your relationships are the strongest of those three. As far as health goes, let's have a look at your chart here, and then we're going to come back to your toes, because there's some action that you need to take in regards to your health. So let's look at the 6th house, the house of health, where the cusp of it is going into Virgo, which is the ruler of the 6th house. And then you've got your Pluto sitting here at 29 degrees of Virgo, but right there at the very beginning of your 6th house, rather. And in your 6th house, you've got Uranus, which is the awakener. And you've got your moon, which is your emotional self, your emotional needs. So you have a high need for health. And then we look over here on the opposite side, both of these houses so the sign of Libra is intercepted right here in your 6th house. The sign of Aries is intercepted in your 12th house. Your 12th house is the sign of mental health. And so health is something that is vital for you to pay attention to. And one of the things that I'm seeing in your toes is just this dryness that you have here. Dryness, nourishment. Pay attention to the nourishment that you're giving your body. If you know how to sway test or muscle test, do that before you eat food, just asking if it's for your highest and best good, and make sure that you are hydrated with high quality water, pure water. All right. Pure water would be the best thing for you. Okay. Let's talk about your trust and prosperity toes. Definitely some blocked energy here. Before we go there, you do have this 6th toe, this global perspective. And so You think big. When we look at this chart here, you got Jupiter right here in your eighth house of transformation, and here in Capricorn. So this is this is part of your life's work. This is the way that you will achieve. This is the way that you will find success. And so that sixth toe is going to play, or has played, a big part in your life. One other thing, it's not showing up in this chart, but I know that your part of fortune is in the ninth house, which is ruled by Sagittarius, which is the sign of long distance travel and higher learning. And so that global impact has to do with far reaching, long distance travel, higher learning. That has to do with this sixth toe. And so, speaking of the part of fortune, which is in your ninth house and in the sign of Capricorn, let's talk about these toes here. These two toes and these toes. So, your first toes and your last toes, in order, are the ones that could use the most love and the most massage, followed closely by these second toes, your communication and expression toes. Do you trust yourself? You have been taught not to trust yourself. That's part of the callousing that you've got going on here. You've been taught not to trust yourself. So how do you feel your inspiration? And how do you feel your intuition? Those two things. Where do you feel inspiration? Is it in your heart? Is it in your head? Is it in your gut? And where do you feel your intuition? How does your body give you the promptings, the yes or no's? And will you trust it? The question is not, can you trust it? With all that Cancer energy and then your Scorpio moon, you are a highly intuitive individual. Highly intuitive. You absolutely can trust yourself. It's time to trust yourself. Release the blocks. Looks like you've even got a little scar here from an injury. Release the blocks that are keeping you in a space of not trusting. You've got a tiny little nail and you're looking to the future. So it's time to trust yourself now. What does that look like? What structures can you put in place so that you are listening to that? Is that doing a daily card reading? Is that doing, like we talked about, the sway test with food, or listening to other ways that your body is communicating to you about what is in alignment and what is not? That is going to help this little toe so much. Also, when you ground all the way through your root chakra, down your legs, into your feet, all the way down to those toes. Those are also your earth toes. And they are somewhat grounded, but they're grounded from the side, not from the base of the toe. So ground the base of the toe in. You are a relatively grounded person. We can see that with these big toes, how you've got the large pads and they are flat down on the ground. Extend that out to these little toes. And over here, do you trust yourself in the outside world and the way you interact? The answer to that is yes. And it leans here into this relationship toe. So yes, but you've got this tiny little nail on here, which you're protecting yourself, which we already know, and the way that you are interacting with the outside world and trusting. Sometimes you're too trusting. One of the first things that I said when we got on this reading is you think you're the strong one. And you are absolutely incredibly strong. But you're also playing a role of the hero. When we think that we're the strong one, and so we will enable others or take on other people's stuff because we're the strong one, that's not serving you. And it's time to stop that. You are strong, period. You don't have to save people. You don't have to take on other people's stuff because you're strong. So it's time to stop doing that. Please journal and meditate on that. I'm going to go over to this look at, this is a couple of weeks ago from the flash reading and now. So obviously we've got some different lighting going on in here, but I want to just look. Oh, there it is. Please receive the energetic release that's already happening through awareness of your toes. The thing that I love is once people book their appointment with me, the energy already starts to move. The energy is moving for you. Take advantage of that and release these things that we've talked about today. So let's talk about a few changes that we've seen since I saw your toes last. So one of the changes that I'm the most excited about is the space between your first and second toes. It almost looks like in this picture from a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, actually, that your toes are leaning into each other. Your big toe and your second toe are leaning into each other. If you notice, there is more space here. So your intuition, you are trusting your intuition more. This channel of intuition is opening and you are stepping into more of that leadership. There has been some energy released here in these communication expression toes. As you massage these toes, like we talked about in this session, that's going to happen more and more. Now, this is an interesting change and a little bit of an unexpected change. So if we look at this action toe here, and we look at this relationship toe, and then we look at it here. It is more circular here and here. This is action going straight. This is independent action. This is more of a collaborative action energy. So I would be curious to know, and I look forward to talking to you when we have our session on, just looking back in your calendar and your journals. What were you doing on the date that this picture was taken, where this action was straightforward and rather solitary? And in this picture, how it is collaborative. And so that would be an interesting thing to look at. There are some changes. There's not a ton of changes. It looks like the sides of these toes, the side right here, the future side of your big toe, your life path toe, is slightly, it looks a little inflamed here. It looks a little bit less inflamed here. So that's a positive change. And one of the things that I'd really like to see from you is a more even nail across. So I really recommend massaging these toes, especially here in the past, releasing the past, releasing the past, releasing the past. So definitely some energetic changes happening with your toes and a little bit in the physical area. So keep it up. I think if you send me a picture in another 4 weeks, we're going to see some big differences here. And I'd actually love to do a video about that. So in 4 weeks, let's make a note of that when we meet together. All right, I want to move over to your chart and just talk about a couple of other things in your chart. So Venus rules these relationship toes, and Venus is in the sign of Gemini and in the second house. So you highly, highly value relationships. You also connect on an intellectual level. More like that's an important thing. You must connect on an intellectual level before you will feel safe connecting on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level. So just pay attention to that. That could help you with this trust toe in the way that you're moving through the world. Make sure that the people that you are connecting with are in alignment with you, on that intellectual level first. Especially, it's really hard to see in this chart. I pull charts from several different programs so that I can look at different things. Like I said, your part of fortune is over here in the 9th house in the sign of Capricorn. And it doesn't show on this chart. You can see the tiny little R here. Your Venus was retrograde when you were born. That's a relatively rare planetary occurrence for Venus. Venus only spends about 9% of its orbit in retrograde. And when you were born, Venus was in one of its rare retrogrades. So you connect to people at a little bit of a different way, which could have led to some confusion as a child. In your communication and expression, because the way that you were trying to connect with people was not received by people in the way that you wanted or expected. And the way that they were trying to connect with you may just not have felt right, because the way that you attract and connect with people is just a little bit different. So just acknowledge that about yourself, understand that, and that could also be a great journaling prompt. And as you really feel into the intellectual connection, followed by the rest, that's going to also help these trust toes. And I feel, let's see, are there any other messages from these toes at this time? Allow the messages from today to sink into and to be integrated into you. Write down any questions that come up as this integration process is happening so that we can talk about it when we have our session. You're not new to personal development. You're not new to doing the work, what we call the Saturn work and the Pluto work in astrology. You're not new to this. You are an old soul. So this is going to integrate quite quickly. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you about this more when we have our one-on-one session. Thank you.